Good morning, guys. So it's been probably a week or more since I've done a video, and so a lot of you know I love to write. Writing is kind of my thing, and I used to actually not get in trouble, but in school when we were asked to write papers and whatnot, I would actually it would take me a long time, not because I couldn't think of anything to say, but because I usually could think of too much to say, and my papers would be too long. And so I had to spend a lot of time editing and narrowing things down and cutting things out and whatever. So I like to write, and I apparently like to talk almost as much as I like to write. So I'm gonna try to keep this a little bit short, but I just wanted to jump on real quick and say that I've had a couple of people ask me like what I was experiencing before my little encounter on that Wednesday night, January 4th. And I'm just going to call it deliverance because I have friends on both sides of the issue. Like, I have friends that don't really believe in deliverance ministry, and I have friends that believe very strongly in it. And all I can say is I know what happened to me. I know that I was one way and now I'm a different way. And so for lack of a better way to describe it or a better word, I'm just going to call it from my deliverance. So I personally believe that salvation and deliverance are two different things. I believe that you can be saved but still have a lot of things attached to not necessarily your spirit, because I believe that your spirit is whole and is perfect at salvation, and that you can hold a lot of things though, like in your soul or your heart, whatever I'm trying to say. If any of you have better clarification on that, feel free to message me or put it in the comments below, people who are wiser than I am about this type of thing. But I'm going to call it deliverance because that's what it felt like. When it happened to me, it felt like all the things that I had been struggling with, I was being delivered from them. Like, I could physically feel them being delivered out of me. Like it's like having a baby. It's like those things are being pulled out of you. And so that's what I'm going to call it, because I don't want to keep tiptoeing around the subject and trying to think of different words. So anyway, I've had some people ask me like what I was experiencing before that happened. And so I just wanted to give a quick explanation. I knew that I had secured salvation. I knew that. I knew that the work of Jesus on the cross and him shedding his blood covered me. I knew the Bible. I knew what the Bible said about things. And there's a fine line. There's a lot of people who know the Bible. I mean, Satan knows scripture, so I get that. But I didn't just know the Bible. I tried to apply the Bible in my daily life. I tried to be careful of my words and how I or thought I was being careful, how I spoke. And you got to be careful with that too, because that also can be a religious spirit, like works. Like, I've never had a drug. I've never done a drug. I've never smoked a cigarette. I've never drank alcohol. I've never partied. Like, even in school, I didn't do any of those things. I made pretty good grades. I was a pretty obedient kid till I got in upper high school. Things changed a little bit, but I didn't get into trouble at home. And so, like, in my past, I would look at those things of why, that was why it was hard for me to accept Jesus in the first place, because I was good. I was a good kid. And so it took a long time for me to see my need for God, because I was like, well, I'm a good person. I don't do all these things. And so that is religious. Like, that's self-righteousness. And that's wrong. But even after I got saved, I still would take like things in the Bible and try to apply them to my life. Like, I was careful about what I watched, careful about what I listened to. I loved going to church. I loved to serve. All these different things, and so I always felt like, well, I'm trying to do the right thing. Like, I'm trying to serve God. I'm trying to, but I always had like this disconnect. So even though I knew, the pastor would always say, if you were to die right now, like, do you know where you would wake up? And I was confident of that, but somehow still in my daily life there was just always this disconnect. For instance, say, even when I was serving, or even when I was part of a group that was, serving in the church, and when I did kid ministry, or if I happened to be working with the youth, or just whatever it was I was doing, even ministry wise, I just still somehow felt like this disconnect. Like, I wasn't happy. There was no joy. There was no power behind what I was doing. There was, like, I knew what to say. I knew what to, how to act, I guess. And it wasn't ever that I was just like I never just led people down the wrong path of, like, I knew what the Bible said about things. I knew how to get that across, that kind of thing. And the only word I know to use is disconnect. So I might say to some of my friends at church, I love you. And, like, I knew way down deep inside that I wanted to mean it, and I really wanted that. But even when I said it, there was nothing inside of me that felt it, if that makes sense. Like, I knew I should, and I knew I should love, and I knew that I should do these things, but there was no power behind it. It's really hard to explain. So even when I would pray for people, like, if I prayed for somebody, yes, I knew, like, I would say the right words, but I didn't have any power behind it. There was still kind of this disconnect. And then even when I would get through doing certain things, like sharing a testimony, or praying for somebody, or serving, I would always go home and just like, the minute I left that activity, I was already struggling. Like, some of it was me, some of it was the enemy. You didn't mean that. Who do you think you are to get up there and say all these things when you're going home and you're depressed and you're anxious and you're worrying all the time and you have all this fear and whatever. And so it just always disconnect. I don't know what else. I don't know how else to explain it. Like, I just did not feel connected to what I was actually saying and doing. I knew to say it and do it, but I didn't feel connected to it. That's the only way I know to explain it. So even now, like, the moment I got delivered from these things, and I will tell you that a big part of it is confession. So like I said before in another video, I've spent years, people laying hands on me, people praying for me praying for myself, me on the floor crying out to God, please fix this, please take this away from me. Fasting, praying, just all these things, and yet I still carried them. And so I would go down to the altar, you lay these things down, but they're still attached to you. Like, it's not that I was willingly physically picking them up and taking them back with me, but they were still attached to me. Like, I had never fully disconnected them from myself. And so it was always just, I struggled so bad. And there's so many people struggling with this right now. I know, because you are telling me you are. You're telling me, like, I want to serve, and the desire's in there. And the thing is, I love God. I loved Jesus. I loved him. So that's so hard when you're like, I love you, Lord. I love you. But why do I feel so disconnected? Where are these feelings coming from? Like, and so it's confusing. It's frustrating. It's sometimes it can be depressing. It's discouraging, until you get to the point where you're like, well, I shouldn't be praying for anyone. I shouldn't be laying my hands on anybody. I shouldn't be serving. I shouldn't be doing anything, because you just feel inside like guilt and shame and whatnot. And so that kind of brings me to some of the things that I was dealing with and how I know that it's different. So fear was always a big one. Fear of I would lay in bed at night and just think of the most horrible things that would happen. They're going to happen to the people I love, especially my grandkids. I would just lay in bed and think about all the horrible things that could happen to my grandchildren. And I would just cry and beg God, please don't let that happen. Like, please protect them, whatever. And you can ask my daughter, Jayla, a lot. I would text her and say, hey, are the kids sleeping? Like, go check on them for me. I have a bad feeling. I had a bad dream. Like, go see if they're okay. Go see if they're in their beds. I was always like, something bad's going to happen to them. Don't give them this. Don't give them that. Don't let them go here. Don't let them go there. And a lot of that's how I even raised my kids, because of that there was just tons of fear, and then, so it's like some obvious things that people deal with that, you can name them. You're like fear, doubt, worry, anxiety, shame, guilt. Those are all very obvious. Anger. Those are all very obvious things that people deal with. And so